Hello and welcome to Wednesday Warfare, where I review NXT and AEW Dynamite back to back and try and figure out which show won for the week. As always, like what you like, don't be a dick. Let's begin. On commentary tonight, Mauro Ranallo said that this is the first time that more than one title's been defended on a single episode of NXT, which sounds crazy to me that it's the first time, but I'll take his word for it, I guess. The first match is for the NXT tag titles as Imperium defend against Breezango, who come out with a parody of the Imperium thing. It says Emporium, and on their jackets you've got Fabio and Marsupial. And as they're making their entrance, Mauro starts spouting out like word definitions, like Emporium means a fancy store, a Marsupial is a mammal with a pouch. Like, Mauro, are you okay right now? It's a pretty good match. I really enjoyed the athleticism all four guys had on display in this thing. At the end, though, we see Breeze and Bartel dumped on the outside. Suddenly, Indus Sher and Malcolm Bivens show up and look very menacing. Then out come Lorcan and Birch, and they start fighting Indus Sher. And in the chaos, Eichner is able to hit a DDT on Fandango to win and retain the titles. You know, it's, first of all, good opening match. Second of all, nice to see an emphasis on real tag teams who aren't called the Undisputed Era right now in the tag team like title scene. Because, you know, last tag team champions were Riddle and Dunn, then it was Riddle and Thatcher, and so now we've got, you know, actual team of Eichner and Bartel, and all their contenders right now are other kind of like real tag teams, not just like two single guys put together for one kind of purpose. So it's nice to see kind of emphasis on that. As far as like which tag team is the best shot at like challenging Imperium next, my guess, based on the fact that they were promoting a match with these two teams at some point before all this, is Lorcan and Birch, but we'll see. Tom Phillips interviews the Velveteen Dream and asks what's next for him after losing the backlot brawl at TakeOver, and Dream has no time for such silly questions, and as he's talking, Dexter Lumis pops up from behind the couch and places another drawing on the couch next to Dream. It's a drawing of the two of them as NXT Tag Champions, and Dream, he doesn't know where Lumis went to. He just kind of disappeared, so he talks to the camera, talks to Lumis, and says, "This is a misunderstanding. The Dream is a solo act." Sure, Dream, you just keep telling yourself that. Damian Priest takes on Killian Dane. Nice to see Killian back in action. We haven't seen him on TV in a little bit. A very hard-hitting match this is, and during the match, Priest is continuously selling the lower back after he took that hellacious bump off the apron onto the steel steps at TakeOver against Finn. Priest is on Killian's shoulders for an electric chair, but he's able to counter it into the world's largest victory roll. I've never seen two guys that big try and pull off a move like that before, and they pulled it off. They did great. And then Damien hits the Reckoning to win the match. And folks, the Damian Priest babyface train is leaving the station. Get on while you still can. Aliya versus Xia Li again? Why not? During the intros, we see that Robert Stone's in the crowd looking even more disheveled than before. And not only that, he's drunk too. He's got a little bottle in a brown paper bag, and the announcers are just laughing at his misfortune. And then during Aliya's entrance, she grabs Stone and kind of drags his carcass to the ringside area for her match. The match itself, not too special, doesn't really speak of, but the finish, you have Robert Stone getting on the apron and then just projectile vomiting into the ring, and the distraction allows Aliya to roll up Xia, but they fucked that up too, because then Xia is able to accidentally kick out at 2, so Aliya's got to pin her again for the 3 count. I felt bad for everyone involved in that segment, not only the whole puke angle, but then also the fact they fucked up the pinfall at the end to make it a little more clunky than it could have been. Yeah, there we go. That's how Aliya and Robert Stone are going to start working together now, it seems. We get our first installment of Thach's Thach Can Wrestling, in which Timothy Thatcher stretches some poor young boys in the middle of the ring. The whole gist of this video is he's very soft-spoken but deadly in the ring, because he's got, you know, these guys, he's showing off like the Fujiwara armbar and the double wrist lock, and as he's explaining these moves in his very calm fashion, not even breaking a sweat, he's wrenching on the holds, and the guys he's putting in the holds are just like crying out and screaming and tapping out in pain, and there's a curse word at some point. I heard a beep. A lot of beeps tonight between NXT and AEW. A lot of like censor stuff happening across both shows, it feels like. And this is just one of the many examples. So yeah, that's the whole vibe of it. He's very calm, but he's very efficient and very brutal in the ring. So we'll see some more installments of that in the weeks to come. Well, right now, this is in the running for best segment title ever, Undisputed Therapy. We have Adam Cole and Bobby Fish taking Roderick Strong to the best therapist in town to deal with his psychological issues brought about by him being kidnapped by Dexter Lumis at TakeOver. And it's a very cleverly disguised Kyle O'Reilly. It's really interesting because Roderick never looks back to see it's Kyle O'Reilly. So for all he knows, it's a real therapist. Why is Adam Cole, like for as wealthy as the Undisputed Era supposedly is, You're telling me he can't afford an actual therapist? He's got to get his friend to wear a hat and talk in a silly voice. Anyway, they're doing ink blot tests, but all Roderick sees is Loomis and the truck. And so Dr. O'Reilly says you have to face your fear and be in the trunk. And so Bobby and Adam take him to the truck and he just runs away, just sprints at full speed the opposite direction. And that's the end of that segment. I thought this was great, so entertaining. I like this side of Undisputed Era, where they're not just godlike and unbeatable, and so just they're prickish, but like now they're kind of they have some weakness, they have some vulnerability now with Roderick being so traumatized and the friends trying to help them out. Like, it doesn't have to do with them having all the gold right now. So in that way, the pressure's off. I think they can have a lot more fun just being their goofy selves, the Undisputed Era. Then right after that, we see Adam Cole backstage standing next to the hourglass and some well-placed product placement by the sponsors there. He begins to talk about Karrion Kross when suddenly Keith Lee walks in on the action. And he says, when you lose that championship, it won't be because of Kross, it'll be because of me. He grabs the hourglass and smashes it down on the ground, breaking it into a million pieces. And then after that, after the commercial break, we then see Adam Cole in the ring cutting a promo. Okay, lots of Adam Cole in consecutive segments on this show, it seems. Cole calls out Lee in the promo saying he wants the North American Championship and he wants to be the champ, bae. I hate it. Out comes Keith Lee to respond, but before he can say anything, Johnny Gargano interrupts and he says he wants a shot at the North American title. And then Lee says, last week in the mixed tag team match, I cared more about your wife than you did. And then when I was holding her in my arms, I heard her say, "Thank you, Mr. Limitless. That's more action than I've had all year long." And Johnny's reaction to that was, "I was there. That didn't happen. You're being weird." I love heel Johnny Gargano right now. Then Finn Balor shows up and says everyone in the ring are marks for him. He also wants a shot at the North American title. Finally, William Regal pops up on the big screen and says that next week Keith Lee will defend the North American title against Balor and Gargano in a triple threat, and the winner of that match will take on Adam Cole in a winner-take-all match on July 8th, which, by the way, is night 2 of Fyter Fest. That's how they'll be competing against that show. But what crazy news that is. By this time next month, someone could hold both the singles championships on NXT. It's a pretty big deal. I really don't know who that person could be to hold both belts. I'm not going to even begin to speculate until next week when we have a winner in that triple threat match. But yeah, I think it's really interesting news. That's how they're going to be kind of competing on July 8th, is trying to unify those two titles. Caden Carter, who's accompanied by Casey Catanzaro, clashes with Dakota Kai, who's accompanied by Raquel Gonzales. A lot of K sounds in that sentence. The match itself is okay. I love this move Caden does near the end where she's got Dakota's head between her legs over the ropes and just drops down to her knees, dropping her head first into the mat. That's pretty innovative. After that move, though, Raquel gets involved. Casey Catanzaro diving off the apron onto Raquel, and Raquel just gently drops her onto the apron. That was pretty disappointing. I saw the size difference between those two. I'm like, oh my God, Raquel's just going to ragdoll Casey. It's going to look so cool. But it's I'm just going to gently put you down face first on the apron and then give you a pat in the back. It seemed, it was a little underwhelming there. But in the confusion, that allows Dakota to lock Caden in her submission to win the match. We see a shot backstage of Scarlett and Karrion Kross walking up to the shattered hourglass. Then we see a hype package for Mercedes Martinez, who's on her way to television soon. And then after that, we see Bronson Reed versus Leon Ruff. It's a huge mismatch in size, and it all takes is 3 moves for Bronson to destroy Leon, including a top rope splash, which damn near flattens Leon. Ouch. Then after the match, Bronson gets on the microphone and calls out Karrion Kross for a rematch next week, and then Bronson picks up Leon and just carries him over his shoulder to the back. What a guy. Outside the building, Damian Priest finds his tires have been slashed, and then we see Cameron Grimes roll up and make fun of him for it before driving off, and just the laugh that he has after that as he drives off is just such a pure, just a funny, awesome cackle he does as he drives off. It was amazing. It wasn't made crystal clear in the video, but it's basically said, oh, by the way, Cameron Grimes slashed Damian Priest's tire, so they'll be wrestling next week. So there you go. It's time for Santos Escobar, the former El Hijo del Fantasma, to speak out. He comes out with his men, and the group is now called Legado del Fantasma. He says on the microphone he was tired of hiding behind a mask for the last 20 years, and he knew when he came to NXT, the story of El Hijo del Fantasma would come to a close. He said his father told told him growing up that he would grow up to be a leader, not a luchador. I'm not entirely sure what that phrase means, but nevertheless, he calls himself the leader of leaders. Drake Maverick then shows up on stage. He's a man of few words. He storms the ring and tries to fight Escobar, but the numbers game is too much. And then they fight their way through the crowd to this very conveniently placed table with these very obviously fake plastic hollow laptops and monitors on the table. It looked so hokey and fake. But we get the Phantom Driver off a riser through the table on a Drake, and that's where the segment ends. By the way, apparently Phantasma had been unmasked before coming back to TV as El Hijo del Fantasma in the tournament, like when he was doing NXT on the road, he was unmasked. So I didn't know that. Thank you to the comment section for pointing that out to me last week. Main event time, Women's Tag Team Championships as Bayley and Sasha Banks take on Tegan Nox and Shotzi Blackheart. This match is pretty good. I really enjoyed the chemistry between Sasha and Shotzi, I think, above all else. Near the end, Nox choke slams Sasha off the apron into Bayley, and Shotzi with a big dive following that. Sasha has the bank statement locked in, but Shotzi's able to flip out of it into cattle mutilation, and then Tegan and Bayley are fighting over a chair when the referee's distracted. Bayley yoinks Shotzi out of the hold. That allows the bank statement to be locked in again, and that makes Shotzi tap out. So the champions retain here, and then after that, Io Shirai, the women's champion, comes in and just jumps the champs, and they go run away, and that's how the show wraps up. I'm like, that feels pretty unprovoked. Like, why did she do that? Because they never interacted before that. And Io's the baby face, and I don't think the heels were doing anything that bad. They weren't doing like a post-match beatdown. It's just more like of the cross-pollination, I guess, of the NXT and the main roster. It's in a different way they did with when Charlotte was a champion, for example. So will this lead to something more like on SmackDown, or will Bayley and Sasha keep coming to NXT? Who's to say? But I thought it was interesting that Io just shows up there apropos of nothing going on.
It doesn't matter to me if you're some shoot fighter, if you're some karate, if you're a boxer.
Dynamite opens up with a tag title match as Omega and Paige defend against the Natural Nightmares. Omega's the only one here who gets an entrance, but by the time the show begins, everyone else has already been in the ring. Also, apparently the Natural Nightmares have been undefeated at AEW this year, so shows what I know. I was wondering, why are they getting a tag title match? Well, that makes a lot of sense. They're ranked number 2 and they're undefeated. Some good work in the ring here. For me, one of my top spots of the match wasn't even the match itself. It's Britt Baker, who's like on the stage below the announce team, and she's feeding notes to Shivani with a pulley system. She pins the note to the string and she pulls the string, and you see it go up there to Shivani, which was pretty hilarious. I was loving that bit. Dustin and QT are flying all over the place after the hot tag for a while, and QT even hits a diamond cutter on Paige. After that, though, we see Aliya make her way to the ring, who's been specifically instructed to not appear at ringside. You see there's some confrontation with her and Brandy. The distraction's enough for QT to miss the marrow assault, take the last call from the champions for Omega and Paige to retain. Good opening match, and they're doing more to kind of establish that Aliya may be a bad influence for QT Marshall. We get a profile on relative newcomer Anna Jay as she takes on Abaddon. And I'm like, oh no thank you to that. I saw her for the first time in that match she had on Dark in March. I was like, no way, that is way too freaky for me. She looks like something that pops up in a jump scare video. That's not for me. Oh, I was like, give me the Ghiblies there. As the match begins, Britt passes a note to Tony saying this broad needs to find Jesus ASAP. JR describing Abaddon as having a low center of gravity and girth, but good girth, I think is how athletic girth is how he described it. She wins in short order with the Hurricane Rana DDT. Then afterward, the Dark Order appear. Evil Uno hands Colt Cabana, who's sitting at ringside, hands him a contract of some sort. He's looking very conflicted and confused. We find out later it's a contract for a tag team match where he and Brody Lee will be teaming up in action. And then they also pick up Anna Jay and they carry her out of the ringside area. So will the Dark Order soon recruit a lady? That should be interesting. I think that would make them probably one of the most well-rounded stables if they had a woman in their group. I mean, Brandy's part of the elite, but I mean, she doesn't really wrestle. Up next, MJF taking on Billy, parentheses Gunn, in singles action. Early on, MJF tries to powder out of the ring, but Billy won't have any of it. He catches him, he grabs him, and he dumps him back in the ring. MJF working on Billy's knee a lot in this matchup. He goes for a reverse figure 4 with ropes as leverage, but referee Aubrey Edwards kicks his arm out from the ropes. She's definitely a student of Earl Hebner's with that kick there. In the end, Billy hits the famouser, but Wardlow distracts the referee, tosses the Dynamite Diamond ring to MJF, who then pops Billy in the mush with it to win the match. And then after that happens, Jungle Boy, who's at ringside, gets in MJF's face, and we've got Luchasaurus and Wardlow fighting, and that's a big old pull-apart brawl and everything. So clearly, the Jungle Boy MJF feud, not over yet. I'm always looking forward to seeing what these guys can bring. After the match, JR tosses over to Alex Marvez, standing by with two very sexy men. It's Chris Jericho and Sammy Guevara. And so they asked, Jericho, why'd you beat up Orange Cassidy so bad last week? And he said because he had the audacity to interrupt the Inner Circle twice in the last couple of weeks. And he and Sami say they're going to become the new #1 contenders for the Tag Team Championships. And then elsewhere, we see Tony Schiavone interviewing Britt Baker in her Rolls Royce, the Role Models Royce. And she lets everyone know that, Tony first of all announces that, hey, Penelope Ford's going to challenge Hikaru Shida for the Women's Championship at Fyter Fest. And Britt's very upset at Tony for this. And she's had enough and she wants Rebel/Reba to drive her off. But then the camera moves over to see Big Swole as commandeered the Rolls Royce. Pulls an Undertaker, "Where to, Britt?" And then she drives off, kidnapping Britt Baker. Oh, what will happen? This week, Cody's open challenge for the TNT title is directed toward anyone who's not a part of AEW. In his pre-match promo, Cody just kind of openly questions, am I even part of the Elite anymore? Is the Nightmare Family a thing anymore? Those are very valid questions, and I wonder why you just left it open-ended like that and just didn't answer the question at all. Arn on the mic then introduces Cody's opponent. It's Ricky Starks, former NWA Television Champion. I didn't even know he left the NWA, so this was a surprise to me. The match itself, I think Ricky looked really good here. I think that this match just ramped up in intensity as it went on, and Ricky looked like he was in top form here against Cody. At one point, they're just throwing haymakers at each other. Finally, there's a lot of roll-up counters into roll-ups and stuff, and Cody finally hits the crossroads to win and retain the TNT title. Great debut for Starks here, picking up right where he left off in the NWA. The Superbad Squad, Kip Sabian and Jimmy Havoc, take on the Young Bucks. Butcher and the Blade are wearing the cutest little matching white beanies as they're at ringside jaw-jacking with the Young Bucks. If there's one thing I had to say about this match, it felt like it was a little too long. I know the Young Bucks matches tend to go that length, but this one just felt like it was going on and on and on, especially because we had the Butcher and the Blade not only jaw-jacking, but they would hop the railing and then go into the Superbad Squad's corner. Then you see FTR come out and then kind of be in the Bucks' corner as the match is going on. Jimmy at one point wants to bring a rubber mallet into the ring, and that allows Ford to hit Nick with a wet floor sign. Some great double team work by both teams here as this match progresses. Hard-fought match. The Bucks make Sabian pile drive his own partner in Havoc, and then we get the double knees to Sabian's head for the Bucks to win. But then right after the bell rings, B&B storm the ring and jump the Young Bucks, and FTR come in and join the fray, and they all has fight. It's a big old melee here. Then the Bucks and FTR get a little competitive. We get some stereo spike pile drivers to end the segment. So we're more of the kind of one-upsmanship, what can you, it's without, boy, I was almost going to steal the phrase, anything you can do, we can do better. But I think the Street Profits and the Viking Raiders can't hold a candle to what FTR, the Young Bucks, will eventually will do in the ring. We had a couple of contrasting promos from both sides. The world title match for Fyter Fest. First we see Taz and Brian Cage outside the building, and they're talking about Jon Moxley, and Taz goes, "You think you're a miserable son of a bitch, Cole? No doubt about it. I took that gimmick decades ago, Cole." Then Cage wraps up the promo with a little nod to his former mentor, Canyon, saying who better. And then after the commercial break, we get a Jon Moxley promo where he calls himself the judge, jury, and executioner of AEW, and that he's got demons, and he can only quell the demons by dishing out pain to people. So Brian Cage is in his path, and he ends the promo by copping Taz's signature "beat me if you can" catchphrase, and that's where we end that. An update on Britt Baker. Rebel finds her in a dumpster, and Britt is livid. She fires Rebel, she rehires her, she wants Tony Schiavone taken off the best friend timeout list, and she threatens to sue Big Swole for kidnapping her. She's just blaming everyone and everything for her problems right now. I think this was a good week of content with Swole and Baker and stuff, and their growing rivalry. I think the last couple weeks have been pretty entertaining between these two. Main event time. Les Sex Gods, Jericho and Guevara, take on the Best Friends, who are putting their #1 contendership on the line after what Jericho did to Orange Cassidy last week. We got Matt Hardy on commentary for this matchup here. He'll be facing Sammy Guevara next week on Dynamite, and the whole gimmick is Sammy will get to pick which Matt Hardy persona he gets to wrestle. Should be interesting. Jericho using the bat on Trent at one point in the match. Trent's taking most of the heat for most of the time in this thing. Guevara hits Trent with the bat again and a shooting star press, but Trent still kicks out. Guevara goes off the ropes, but he seems to be tripped up by one of the cameramen at ringside. That allows Trent to capitalize and win the match for his team. So they're going to still take on Paige and Omega at Fyter Fest. Meanwhile, the cameraman gets in the ring and unmasks to reveal it's Orange Cassidy. And he's steaming mad at Jericho. He takes him down a couple of times, throws some punches and everything, and chases Jericho off as we fade to black. I thought the match was a lot of fun. I thought that the twist at the end of Orange being the cameraman and everything was a nice little bit of a last laugh on Jericho before their contest. Yes, it was made official tonight. You're going to have Orange and Jericho at Fyter Fest. Yes, that match cannot come soon enough. Time now for me to decide which show won for the week, NXT or AEW Dynamite. This week, I'm going to go and say it's a tie. I think that both shows were about the same level this week. I think that both shows had some stuff that entertained me, made me laugh. In particular, NXT had the Undisputed Therapy. AEW had Britt Baker antics. I think both had some pretty good matches, but nothing spectacular about them. I think both shows were just okay, and sometimes that's okay. But let me know what you thought about NXT and AEW this week in the comments section below. I've seen some comments in my latest videos last couple of days asking what happened to the SmackDown review. Well, as I mentioned this time last week, I decided to do the SmackDown review on my Instagram Live at Brian Zane. And I was pretty happy with how it turned out. I was satisfied with it. I think we got some good reactions in the chat. And so what the heck, I'm going to do it again this week. So once again this week, the SmackDown review will be live at roughly, maybe a little before 9 o'clock Pacific time on Friday night. And check out Instagram.com. Brian Zane is the account name. So check that out and you'll have my live and unfiltered reactions to what happened on the Blue brand. But until then, I'm Brian Zane and I'll see you next time.